For more than 4 years, Russia's war has failed to deliver the quick and decisive victory that Vladimir Putin promised. What was initially presented as a short, special military operation, has instead turned into a prolonged and exhausting conflict with no clear end in sight. Despite deploying large numbers of troops, tanks, missiles, and air power, Russia has been unable to fully defeat Ukraine or force it into surrender. Major cities remain under Ukrainian control, front lines have shifted only slowly, and every kilometer gained has come at a very high cost. This failure to secure a decisive win has transformed the war into a grinding stalemate, which is one of the most dangerous outcomes for any military power. The longer this stalemate continues, the more it undermines Russia's strategic position. A war without victory drains resources, weakens military readiness, and exposes weaknesses that were previously hidden. Russia's armed forces were once considered a fast, overwhelming force, but the conflict has revealed serious problems in planning, coordination, logistics, and battlefield adaptation. Each year the war continues, Russia must commit more men and equipment simply to hold its current positions, leaving little room for a breakthrough. This situation also damages Putin's image as a strong leader. His authority has long been built on the idea that he restores Russian power and never loses. A war that drags on without success challenges that narrative. At home, questions quietly grow about why so many lives and resources are being sacrificed without a clear result. Internationally, Russia's inability to win decisively weakens its deterrence and credibility. By 2026, a prolonged war without victory could force Russia into difficult choices, escalate at enormous risk, accept negotiations from a weaker position, or continue bleeding slowly, each option carrying serious consequences for Putin and Russia's future.
В третьем эпизоде напряжение вокруг Покровска стало ощущаться почти физически. Воздух над городом словно был пропитан тревогой, и каждый новый день начинался не с утреннего света, а с попытки понять, где именно ночью были слышны взрывы и какие районы пострадали сильнее. Военные подразделения, остававшиеся на позициях, все чаще сталкивались с тем, что привычные схемы снабжения переставали работать. Грузы приходили с опозданием, иногда не приходили вовсе, а то, что удавалось доставить, распределялось почти поштучно. Это заставляло командиров пересматривать планы, откладывать некоторые операции и сосредотачиваться лишь на самом необходимом – удержании ключевых точек и защите путей возможной эвакуации гражданских. Солдаты рассказывали, что главным врагом стала не только внешняя угроза, но и усталость. Постоянное напряжение, ночные дежурства, короткий сон в холодных укрытиях и понимание, что смена может не прийти вовремя, постепенно подтачивали моральное состояние. Разговоры в перерывах все чаще касались дома, семьи, обычной жизни, которая теперь казалась чем-то далеким и почти нереальным. Тем не менее, даже в этих условиях сохранялась дисциплина, каждый знал, что его участок важен для общей линии обороны, и что от его внимательности может зависеть безопасность других. В четвертом эпизоде все больше внимания стало уделяться попыткам найти варианты для частичного вывода сил и ротации подразделений. Но любые такие планы упирались в суровую реальность. Дороги, которые на карте выглядели как возможные маршруты отхода, на практике оказывались простреливаемыми, с поврежденным покрытием и завалами. Иногда разведка сообщала о коротких промежутках относительного затишья, но за эти несколько часов нужно было успеть слишком многое: подготовить колонны, проверить технику, предупредить подразделения, обеспечить прикрытие. Малейшая задержка могла сорвать весь замысел. Внутри города жизнь мирных жителей тоже все больше подчинялась этим же ритмам тревоги и ожидания. Люди учились быстро спускаться в укрытие, заранее держать собранные сумки с документами и лекарствами, а также поддерживать друг друга простыми словами и делами. Кто-то делился последними запасами еды, кто-то помогал пожилым соседям добраться до подвалов. В таких мелочах проявлялась удивительная способность людей сохранять человечность даже тогда, когда вокруг рушится привычный порядок. Чем дольше длилось противостояние, тем отчетливее становилось ощущение, что Покровск превратился в узел, где сходятся не только дороги, но и судьбы. Для военных это был сложный участок фронта, требующий максимальной концентрации и выдержки. Для мирных жителей – место, которое одновременно было домом и зоной постоянной опасности. И в этих условиях сам вопрос о выходе или отходе переставал быть простым тактическим решением и превращался в тяжелый выбор между риском, временем и человеческими жизнями, который приходилось делать снова и снова.
The economic burden of the war is steadily tightening around Russia, creating long-term pressure that directly affects its military power. Fighting a modern, large-scale war is enormously expensive, and Russia has been forced to pour vast amounts of money into salaries, equipment replacement, ammunition production, logistics, and compensation for casualties. While the government has managed to keep the economy functioning in the short term, this has come at the cost of draining reserves and redirecting resources away from civilian development. As the war stretches on, these trade-offs become more painful and harder to sustain. Sanctions have added another layer of strain. Restrictions on banking, technology imports, and energy exports have limited Russia's access to advanced components needed for modern weapons, communications, and precision systems. Although Russia has found workarounds and alternative suppliers, these solutions are often more expensive, slower, and lower in quality. At the same time, reduced energy revenues and price caps have tightened the state budget, forcing difficult choices about where money is spent. Military funding has been prioritized, but this leaves less for healthcare, education, infrastructure, and social programs that keep public support stable. Inflation, labor shortages, and rising costs of living are also indirect consequences of the war economy. As more workers are sent to the front or into defense factories, civilian industries suffer. Small and medium businesses struggle, and regional governments face growing financial stress. These economic pressures do not cause immediate collapse, but they slowly weaken the foundation that supports a long war. By 2026, sustaining high levels of military spending could become increasingly unsustainable without triggering broader economic damage. An economy under constant war pressure limits Russia's ability to modernize its forces, maintain morale, and respond to unexpected crises. Over time, economic strain turns into strategic weakness, reducing Russia's options and increasing the risks for Putin's leadership. As the war continues with no clear end, morale inside Russia is steadily eroding, both among soldiers on the front lines and civilians at home. Many troops are facing repeated deployments, long periods in dangerous conditions, and the constant loss of comrades. For soldiers who expected short service or clear objectives, the reality of an endless and brutal conflict has created exhaustion and psychological strain. This kind of prolonged stress weakens discipline, reduces motivation, and lowers the willingness to take risks in combat. Within Russian society, war fatigue is also growing. Families are dealing with the absence or loss of loved ones, while everyday life becomes more expensive and uncertain. Even if open protest is limited by strict controls, frustration does not disappear, it simply goes underground. People begin to question whether the sacrifices are worth it, especially when the war's goals seem unclear or constantly changing. Quiet skepticism can be just as damaging as public dissent because it undermines trust in leadership and official narratives. The gap between state messaging and lived reality further damages morale. Official media continues to present the war as necessary and successful, yet social media, private conversations, and returning soldiers often tell a very different story. This contradiction creates cynicism, especially among younger generations, who are more connected to alternative sources of information. When belief in victory fades, morale becomes harder to restore, no matter how strong propaganda efforts are. By 2026, declining morale could have serious military consequences. An army may have weapons and manpower, but without belief in the mission, its effectiveness drops sharply. Soldiers become more defensive, commanders take fewer risks, and cohesion weakens. At the national level, widespread war fatigue reduces the government's flexibility, making mobilization, economic sacrifices, and long-term commitment increasingly difficult to sustain. Russia's ability to sustain a modern war is increasingly limited by weaknesses in its military-industrial base and technological capacity. While the country still produces large quantities of weapons and ammunition, much of this output relies on older designs and Soviet-era production methods. Modern warfare demands advanced sensors, secure communications, precision-guided munitions, and integrated battlefield networks, areas where Russia faces persistent gaps. These shortcomings reduce the effectiveness of its forces, especially against opponents supported by modern Western technology. One of the most serious challenges is access to advanced components. Sanctions have restricted Russia's ability to import high-quality microelectronics, optics, and specialized materials needed for modern weapons systems. Although alternative supply routes exist, they are often unreliable, costly, and unable to meet the scale or quality required for sustained innovation. As a result, Russia has been forced to simplify designs, reuse older components, or downgrade capabilities, limiting performance on the battlefield. Aging factories and workforce issues add further pressure. Many defense plants operate at maximum capacity, leading to equipment wear, quality control problems, and worker burnout. Skilled engineers and technicians are in short supply, while younger talent often avoids long-term careers in outdated industrial environments. This slows modernization and makes it difficult to transition from mass production of basic systems to advanced next-generation weapons. By 2026, these industrial and technological limits could significantly constrain Russia's military options. Producing large numbers of weapons is not the same as producing effective ones. As opponents continue to adapt and innovate, Russia risks falling further behind in quality and integration. Even if the army remains large, a lack of technological edge reduces its ability to conduct complex operations, defend against precision strikes, or deter adversaries in future conflicts. As military pressure, economic strain, and social fatigue accumulate, the political risks facing Vladimir Putin grow steadily more serious. For years, his authority has rested on stability, control, and the image of strength. A long war that delivers no clear victory weakens all three pillars. Even in a tightly controlled political system, prolonged failure creates tension among elites, security services, and regional leaders who depend on the center for resources and protection. When costs rise and rewards disappear, loyalty can quietly erode. The war has also reshaped expectations within Russia's power structure. Military commanders, intelligence agencies, and political insiders are under constant pressure to produce results, yet many understand the limits of what can realistically be achieved. This gap between expectations and reality increases blame shifting, internal rivalries, and risk-averse behavior. Instead of bold decisions, the system becomes focused on self-preservation, which slows adaptation and weakens overall governance. Public dissatisfaction, even if largely silent, adds another layer of risk. While mass protests may be suppressed, declining trust and growing cynicism reduce the effectiveness of mobilization and propaganda. Each new call for sacrifice, whether economic or military, becomes harder to justify. Over time, maintaining control requires more coercion and spending, increasing the burden on the state. By 2026, Putin may not face sudden overthrow, but he could be forced into difficult strategic choices. These include escalating the conflict at high risk, seeking negotiations from a weaker position, or reshaping internal politics to maintain control. Each option carries serious consequences. Political systems under sustained stress rarely collapse overnight, instead, they become brittle. In such conditions, unexpected events, military setbacks, economic shocks, or elite conflicts, can trigger rapid change, making 2026 a potentially pivotal year for Russia's leadership.